What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of JaAR. JaAR, for those of you that may be new, stands for Joe.
And Amy.
Review. And we're back this week to talk about the Renegade Prime story. Renegade Prime, a.k.a. Pia Nalaar, a.k.a. the mother of Chandra. It's fantastic. First of all, I actually want to start off this video by saying a huge thank you to all of you guys that watched our video last time.
Yes.
It's had amazing success, the most successful JaAR we've ever had.
Yeah.
We did talk about two different stories in it. So, I mean, maybe that's a thing. Maybe you guys appreciated that. It was a little bit of a long one, even for us. So,
yeah.
thank you guys for sticking through it.
I was worried that we'd get even less views than normal because it was such a long episode. But
yeah. But great support. It makes us really happy. So, if you've already watched it, thank you so much. If you haven't yet and you're interested, because we've now hyped it up, click this thing up here that's going to pop up. Feel free to do that. And go give it a watch, give it a listen, whatever you want to call it. I really enjoyed making the last one. I mean, I enjoy making all of these, but I think the last one was great. And again, you guys have given us a lot of great feedback and even just views, etc. So we really, really appreciate all of your support on that video, on all of our videos, etc. Into the meat of this one, again, Chandra's mother. The one thing I have to say, the main thing that I want to say about this story, we saw in the beginning a bit of a flashback of Pia in jail, talking to her jailer, talking to the guy who, Banal, was that his name? No, I'm not.
Or something similar.
I wrote down everybody's names. I didn't write down this asshole's name. Anyway, he is a jerk. They portrayed him as a jerk.
You're the asshole.
Yeah, they portrayed him as a jerk, which was great. They did a great job of that. But we get to see him. We get to hear from him. There's still a question as to whether he is going to be found now, because that's kind of the vendetta that Chandra is going to be going after.
That's a question so much as an
inevitability. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I haven't seen his card yet. Maybe that gets spoiled later. I will also say that the second of the 5 story spotlight cards has been spoiled, and only the second. By this time, for Shadows over Innistrad, and I feel like a lot of people have been talking about this, but by this time for Shadows over Innistrad, when that was being spoiled, Anguished Unmaking, I feel like, was already spoiled.
Yeah.
And when we were doing the reviews for the stories for Shadows over Innistrad, all we kept saying was, well, we know Anguished Unmaking's coming, and so that's going to be... And that kind of sucks, right? Because it spoils the story for us.
Right.
They're spoiling them so far. Now, there have only been 2, but they have spoiled them in order, and they're taking their sweet time, which is just awesome.
Yeah. Well, I think they're just listening to people's feedback.
Exactly.
Everybody, well, not everybody. I feel like it was divided. It was half the people were happy that the cards got spoiled before the story came out, and the other half of the people were like, what the...
Well, and clearly, we won't have it where the cards won't be spoiled before the story comes out, just because of the fact that, unless 3 story spotlight cards are happening next week, I mean, pre-release is coming up real quick. So
it is, actually, yeah.
So, which is fantastic, and, shameless plug, stay tuned to the channel. We'll subscribe down below. We'll have pre-release kit openings and booster box openings and fat pack battles between the two of us. You guys, we love it. You guys hopefully will love it, but that's for another time.
But I also kind of feel like that's part of the reason why they kind of chopped the end right off of that conspiracy stories.
Well, and
I feel like they just felt rushed to get these stories out before the set came out.
I don't know about all that, but as we were saying, I think that it was just poor planning to begin with, and like the spacing was bad, which again may have been then why they released a story on Monday, a story on Wednesday, and a story on Monday.
Right.
And it could have been because they were releasing cards as well, and so they wanted the cards to coincide with the story, which I will never complain about. That was something that I talked about with Shadows over Innistrad that I wanted, and then they gave it to us in Kaladesh. So they're just improving by leaps and bounds any concerns that people have had, or not any, but a lot of concerns that people had, they're addressing.
That's not really an issue I had. I don't know. I feel like it didn't matter that much because there was enough meat to the stories still, to give them validity, even though you knew the main aspects of what was going to happen.
Correct, and we said that to a degree, right? Where we were like, well, we know Anguished Unmaking is coming, but that doesn't mean we're not going to read it, you know?
Right.
And especially
and all of the stories involving Avacyn were insanely good.
Especially
so
I Am Avacyn, yeah.
Yeah, so it really didn't matter that Anguished Unmaking got spoiled first.
True. Well, and the other thing is, you know, these are things that you didn't necessarily know you needed or know you wanted, but they gave it to you anyway. And an example of that would be the story spotlight ranking or number, if you want to say that, at the bottom of the cards. The fact that on the bottom of all of these story spotlight cards, it specifies story spotlight 1 of 5, 2 of 5, you know, and eventually we will see 3, 4, and 5 of 5. I mean, that's brilliant. That's so cool, and they had the space for it, right? I wouldn't have thought that they would have had any space to add anything else on there, and they did. That's on there. It lists the order as well, right? It's 1 through 5 of 5, so you know the order that it goes in. Now, I'm sure if you had read the stories, you would be able to do that with prior ones, you know, looking at Shadows over Innistrad, you wouldn't be like, did Anguished Unmaking happen first? Like, no, obviously Archangel Avacyn or Descend Upon the Sinful was one of the first things that happened. Like, that's pretty clear, but regardless, especially for new players coming in, that's really helpful for them because if they haven't read the stories, they can still experience those stories in the cards themselves.
Right.
And so you can
have plot points.
And you can have it where it'll be spaced out that way. Where you'll have some players who read the stories and then go play with the cards, like us, and you'll have other players who play with the cards and are like, this seems really cool, story spotlight, what does that mean? And it has, I believe, I could be wrong, but it has, I believe, the link to the website on the card as well, so you get to go to the website, read the story, and again, with the work that they've been doing with these stories, and they have been doing really good work with these stories, the work that they've been doing with these stories, it makes sense that they would want to direct their players to the stories because the more people that read them, the more traffic it gets. Look, again, they're a business. The more clicks they get on their website, if that leads people to buy more of their product or see more announcements or read more articles or even see more ads if they have ads on there, that's fantastic.
Or even just care to go and look that up.
Yep.
Versus just, oh, well, here's, you know, I'm finally noticing things. Well, there's also the opportunity to engage someone enough where even if they're not finally just noticing things, they will go and seek it out.
Yep. Yeah. And all of this doesn't really focus on the story today, the Renegade Prime story. I wanted to talk about it because pre-release is coming up, release is coming up. These stories are still going to come up and we're still going to review all of them. What I will say about this story was awesome. I mean, you know, once again, what I think they did super well with this story, that if you're longtime JaAR watchers, you'll know a big problem that I had during the Shadows over Innistrad block was the misuse, in my opinion, of course, of Arlen Cord's story. And I think this was an opportunity for them to take a character who we saw in one of the first stories, Pia Nalaar, and, okay, the question is, can you tell us more about Pia? Now, we have the benefit of having known her from Magic Origins, and we know, like, her last name's Nalaar, so we know enough about her from just that, where even if they had given us nothing, we had more backstory on her by now than we did on Arlen Cord until the Oath of the Gatewatch stories came out. Or not Oath of the Gatewatch, the Eldritch Moon stories came out, excuse me. But, and Pia's not a Planeswalker. Arlen was a Planeswalker. And one of the things with Planeswalkers, and maybe I'm wrong, right? Maybe Arlen was released at that time, and we talked about this. I don't have that kind of an accent. I don't know why I said talked like that. But we talked about this, that Arlen Cord was released when she was released for a very specific design reason, for the same way that Ulrich of the Kralin Horde was released in Eldritch Moon, even though he was the only card in all of Eldritch Moon that flipped that way. Yeah. And it was done that way because you can't have two mythic red-green werewolves in the same set being
Yeah.
really, like, it's just too
It was
much in
just-
design space.
Yeah.
But Ulrich wasn't a huge part of the story to anyone, so did they misstep there? Should they have released Arlen later? But then you run into the Planeswalker problem where Arlen, like, there are a certain number of Planeswalkers that have to be hit, and do you release, you can't release Liliana in Shadows over Innistrad because she doesn't belong in Shadows over Innistrad. She belongs in Eldritch Moon, so how do you swap Arlen Cord and somebody else? So, again, I understand why they did it. This is Pia Nalaar. I think that they fixed it, if you will, with Pia, where you got to see her, you got to hear her backstory immediately.
Yeah.
And again, you can have assumed it, but you didn't know where she was, right? You assumed that, originally you assumed she was dead, then everybody
Right.
was like, well, clearly she's not dead, so show her to us. They showed her to us, and then it was, okay, well, where was she? Well, we didn't have an opportunity to ask where was she, because they just immediately gave it to
Right.
us. They revealed it was Pia, and then the next story, it opens with where she was. Brilliant. That's exactly what we had been asking for.
Right.
I had been asking for, maybe other people as well, with Arlen Cord, right? You told us about this character, you showed us this card, you talked about Arlen Cord in the first story for Shadows over Innistrad, and then you didn't touch on her at all
Right.
again until
To
the beginning
point
of
where
Eldritch Moon.
it was hard to see why she was even in the set.
Oh, yeah. And again,
which we came to find out was
design space
Right,
issues,
exactly.
which makes perfect sense, and I appreciate Mark Rosewater's forthcomingness, that's not really the right word, but frankness in describing it to us and explaining that to us, because there's no reason for him to keep that hidden, and especially if people
No.
are asking those questions, right?
Right.
Now, to me, it makes perfect sense, and I would not be arguing about that
Right.
anymore, but I will say that it just shows that they did it, in my opinion, more, like, better with Pia.
right.
They immediately told us her backstory. Now,
But also it shows that they cared enough to listen to everyone who was saying, hey, wait a minute, what about Arlen Cord?
Yeah.
Like, you built her up so much only to give us, like, this much information on her.
Yeah.
And so then they ended up later on doing a story that, told us more about her.
and to tie it back to the story in a different way, they also showed us Dovin Baan again today.
Yes.
That's also now the second time that we've seen Dovin Baan, which means Dovin Baan, who is also a Planeswalker in this set, who has been spoiled already before the release of this story.
So cool.
We have now seen him twice, which means we've seen him more than we saw Arlen Cord. So even if you want to argue that Pia was a key player before this story, look at Dovin Baan.
Yeah.
He wasn't, and they've already shown shown us him twice. I'm not speaking well today.
No.
They're not. They showed him to us twice now, and that's great because now we get to see more of him. And he's a Vidalcan. He's very kind of flat and emotionless, and so I'm not expecting a full backstory of Dovin Baan where they give him tons of character development or whatever.
No.
But maybe we'll see more of him, right? He's part of the consulate, so we're going to see the consulate, we're going to see their relationships to each other, we're going to see Padim and how she interacts, because she as a card was spoiled and we've already partially seen her. I'm almost certain they'll come back to her. I would be surprised if they didn't. But we've seen her, we've seen Dovin Baan now, we are seeing all of these different characters come into play. At the end of this story, we saw Pashiri. Ovia Pashiri was how they ended the story, which that was odd.
Yeah.
It was an odd choice. In the last story, you ended with Pia Nalaar, which was, again, kind of like Emrakul, not a big, huge, oh my god, I can't believe that just happened to anyone who's been paying attention.
Right.
But maybe to some they were like, wait, Chandra's mother? Oh my god, because it ends with Chandra saying, Mom? And that's the end of the story.
Right.
So again, great. If you haven't been online, if you weren't aware of the fact that, Pia wasn't, like,
Chandra's mom was actually alive.
her body wasn't found, and so if there's no body, there's a lot of, like, tropes in comic books, and I'm pretty sure we've talked about that previously as well. But regardless, they showed her to us, but this ended with Pashiri and kind of Chandra was like, oh, I know you, or, or dictates that she knew this person, and Pashiri's like, great, let's go save your mother, which is cool, but I feel like they were hoping that it would be more of a bombshell than it was, and I didn't quite feel that as much.
Okay.
Maybe we'll see, right? Maybe in the next couple of weeks. And they spoiled her card, which again, I love that. I love when you spoil cards in these stories. It makes them more important. It makes them more relevant. And yes, as people have been saying, that card is then going to be taken and covered by a ton of other YouTubers and things like that. And they might not necessarily say the card that was spoiled in this week's story, Ovia,
right. Like, that might only really matter to those of us who really care about the story. But
I mean, as well, again, not everyone will. I have seen some people who did. And they were like, hey, the story spoiled a card today. It was this one. Check it out.
Well, Wizards is making a good marketing decision in that they, it's a good decision because it means that they'll get more people to read the story because they want to see those spoils.
And
spoilers?
Yeah.
Whatever. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes. And I've praised their spoilers in the past, and I don't mean the individual cards, I mean the way that they do it. The way that they hype you up so much, and they give you a little bit here, and then a little bit there, and then a little bit more here, and a little bit more there. It's not, hey, all the cards were spoiled, go check them out. Because that would be too much. You wouldn't have enough time to read over all those cards and experience them, because the not so good ones...
It would make you not care as much. Oh, yeah, all the spoilers are coming out today.
Right.
You see all the spoilers, and then the next day, you no longer care.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is the not as good cards would be overshadowed by the insane ones.
Right.
So you would have a card like the card that the story... No, it wasn't a story spotlight, but the card that was spoiled, Cathartic Reunion.
Yeah.
That card, in my opinion, is incredible. Now, I'm not a constructed player, but looking at it, it looks really great, especially, even in constructed, especially following Shadows over Innistrad, where you had the Madness mechanic. You want to discard cards, and you're discarding 2 to draw 3. Pretty sure people like drawing cards. And it was, it was a low mana costing card. It just seems fantastic, and yet... If you release them all at the same time, I'm pretty sure people would be like, oh my god, did you see Saheeli Rai? What do you mean Cathartic Reunion? Who cares? There were Planeswalkers spoiled.
Right.
The new Chandra is insane. And which is important. It's important to get hyped about Chandra and Saheeli and Nissa and Dovin and all of the Planeswalkers, as well as all of the legendaries and things like that, because there are commander players and there are standard players and there are modern players. All of these things are important, but...
But that's why timing is important.
Exactly. And again, just like their stories, they're perfecting their spoilers. And I don't see any issues with the way that they're spoiling things. I think that, they've gotten it.
Leave it in the comments.
Yeah, no, totally. Give us your opinion on any of these things that we're saying. But speaking of which, back to the story.
We'll circle back to it eventually.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing is, it worked out really well, right? I thought it was really cool. I thought that one thing that was interesting to me about this story was after the flashback with Pia, you see her standing with her other renegades, and then, which was an okay scene. There was nothing really memorable for me to specifically talk about, except that they described, well, first of all, you get to see Pia kind of being motherly for a second with that young girl who didn't quite know what she was doing, and she just... And at the same time, you got to hear that girl specify that, Renegade Prime is here. I had to be here to see it. Right. So you get to know how the people among the Renegades feel about Pia, but you also get to see how Pia interacts with her Renegades. She is the leader of these Renegades, and yet when this young girl kind of falsely infiltrated their group and was like, this is what I do, and I'm so good at it, when this girl infiltrated, Pia wasn't like, you're useless, and yelled at her in front of all these people. She just took her and helped her and showed her, and didn't...
okay, we can still do this. It's just going to take a second.
And she didn't do it for her.
No.
She told her how to do it. She was like, okay, take your time and listen, despite the fact that she started that interaction with her by going, oh my God, she mentioned that there's not a lot of time left. She's totally right. And that was internally. And then externally, she said, take your time, think about it, listen, what do you hear? And helped her become better. That's amazing. I mean, in the real world, there are not a lot of people who are like that. You know, I could more so imagine people saying, whatever, forget it, just give it to me. And they take it and do it themselves because you've wasted their time, they're in a time crunch, then they become anxious about it. She didn't let any of that in, which again, probably why she's a really good leader or Renegade Prime, but...
And a good mom.
Exactly. Even though she unfortunately didn't have the opportunity to fully flesh out being a mom. Which I hope...
Which hopefully she'll get to do now.
I was just going to say, I hope Cathartic Reunion shows up more in the story. I know it's not a story spotlight, but I hope that shows up more. I expected, since Cathartic Reunion was spoiled today, and this story was about her, I thought there would have been a lot more emotion behind it, you know, behind this story in general. I'm hoping that comes at least once. I don't know that we had, or that we have had yet, an emotional story. And I'd be interested to see how they handle that. I'd be interested to see how they handle love, loss, you know, stuff like that, like the reunion of these two. And if they're not confident with it, maybe they stay away from that. Maybe if that's not the story that they're trying to tell, if they don't want to, I don't even want to say depress you, but they don't want to, like, make you sad.
I feel like they touched on that with Sahili Ryan.
Kind of, but that was more like anger replacing other emotions, and then those other emotions came into play. No? All right. We'll see. I hope that Cathartic Reunion, like I said, plays a bigger role. I think it's really cool. I think that I would really appreciate seeing more of that, I think is what I'm saying. And it would just be great. I would appreciate that a lot. After that interaction is when Pia jumps down from the building, and they kind of clear the streets of all the citizens, and they mention, like, you know, she runs away and a cloaked man or a man in a hood is following her with two others behind her. And I was like, oh, cool. We're finally going to get to where we ended the last story with Pia, Tezzeret, Liliana, and Chandra. God bless you.
Sorry, guys.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong down below. As far as I understand it, at the end of the last story, Tezzeret came up to Pia, put his hand on her shoulder, turned around, Liliana saw that it was Tezzeret, called him out, Chandra and Pia saw each other, and Chandra called out that it was her mother. Not once did they mention that Dovin, Bon, or Nissa were there. And this, if I remember correctly, was being told either from Chandra or Liliana's perspective. So maybe you could argue that they were too distracted, Liliana by seeing Tezzeret, who she's super angry at, or Chandra being so shocked at seeing her mother that she didn't notice them.
Well, they acknowledged that.
When? Today?
Did they? No, last time.
I don't think so. Again, that's why I said, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they did.
I'm pretty sure they did.
And that's why...
Well, at least specifically Chandra seeing Pia.
Oh yeah, that, like, you know, everything else went away. That kind of thing, yes. But, I don't know. To me, it seemed odd that it was like, oh, hey, and your good friend, and that guy who, you know, was the one who led you to want to come to Kaladesh in the first place, are also there. That wasn't mentioned at all, which is
showed up.
Right, which is I mean, again, a little bit of a plot hole, a little bit nitpicky, which is fine. It doesn't take away from the story at all. It did take me a second to be like, wait a minute, they weren't there. We didn't hear about them being there. I would have remembered that. You know, I would have remembered that Nissa and Dovin were there. Regardless, it happens. It's totally fine. I also wanted to say, moving away from the story itself, unless you had anything else for the story, and keep thinking about it, because I wanted to move away from the story for just a second as well and talk about Chandra the card. So many people are super happy about how insane Chandra the Planeswalker is. Chandra the Mind Sculptor, whatever people are saying about Chandra, she looks incredible. And I have to say, it's good because, like, I think it's very flavorful that her card is so good because they are going into this block seemingly to complete Chandra's story arc.
Yeah.
You know, and that doesn't mean that she won't evolve further as a person or whatever, but you started with her in Magic Origins, you're completing her story arc here. Yeah. She finds her mother again, she's hopefully going to confront the man that tore apart her family.
Right. She's
returned to the place that she was afraid to return to.
Yeah.
And now she is the Torch of Defiance. She has that ability to, you know, she has found herself. She has truly found herself. She's
gotten to a point, skill level wise and maturity wise, where she could conceivably go in and actually create enough of a disturbance to overthrow the government.
Right. And
change the rules.
And
make things work better in the favor of the Kaladeshi people.
Kaladeshi makes sense.
Okay.
I think that's right. You know, help them with their ether situation or whatever the case may be. But it really shows that, you know, she has taken everything else out of her mind. I'm hoping that we'll see the warring between Liliana and Nissa influencing her back and forth, and that's, you know, we're seeing her come into her own. Yeah. And so by the end of this story, I think she's going to earn how good that card is.
Yeah.
And it's going to show us that.
And I'm excited about it because I feel like that means that they're going to try to make all of the Gatewatch planeswalkers on an even keel, power level wise.
I would hope so, and
they're trying to even it out.
Yes,
because right now Jace is like, and everybody else is like.
Well, and I have to say, I mean, not counting like Arlen Cord who flips, Wizards of the Coast is not stupid, especially the design, the R&D team of Wizards of the Coast. They are fully aware, and there is a reason why planeswalkers after Jace the Mind Sculptor don't typically have 4 abilities. There's a... God bless you.
Sorry again, guys.
There's a reason for that. There's a reason they don't put 4 abilities on a planeswalker, and like I said, they're not stupid. So R&D did not just go, oh no, we released this Chandra and it has 4 abilities on it. We're not supposed to do that.
People weren't just like holding 4 abilities, tripped and fell, and it landed on the Chandra card.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? They're doing it deliberately. They're doing it on purpose, and they're doing it in such a way that that's what makes me even more so believe that it is intentional for storyline purposes that this card is that good. Do I think that it is $60 sold out pre-order pricing good? I'm not the guy to ask that question of. I don't necessarily think so, but I'm not that guy. So, you know, if you bought it, congratulations, and or I'm sorry. We'll see.
I'm not that guy either, but I will say the art is gorgeous.
The art is, oh my god. Well,
if I could blow that up and hang it on my wall, I'd do that for $60.
To use the word that you talked about, the Kaladeshi art in general is gorgeous. Oh my god. And can we talk about masterpieces for a second? Oh my god. You know, the Kaladeshi inventions.
Second, I would talk about that for a whole other video.
Right. And well, I was going to say, I think that is its whole a video in and of itself. And there are a lot of people better than us to review that. And who have reviewed that, to be completely honest with you. I've seen them myself. I think that they're beautiful. I'm looking forward, hopefully, to opening one. We did get 2 expeditions, one from each set where expeditions were released. So I'm hoping to get some inventions for ourselves as well. It was an incredible moment. There are few feelings in Magic as a player who's not, you know, a pro player or whatever. There are few feelings that are better than being able to open that kind of a card and open that kind of money, whether that is an invention or an expedition, or whether it's just, hey, a foil planeswalker, a foil mythic that's worth a lot of money, whatever the case may be. That feels so good, and to be able to, in you know, for selfish reasons, to be able to share that with you guys when we make a video and one of those awesome openings happens and we open a foil mythic, which we may have done very recently. You can check that out up here.
Shameless plug.
It is a shameless plug, but it's also great. That video is very long. A lot of you have watched it already. Once again, thank you. I think it's totally worth your time. I was the guy sitting there for over an hour, but I think it was totally worth your time. And again, opening foil mythics feels really good. So, yeah. Masterpieces are fantastic. I'm looking forward to seeing how it works going forward. I think I agree with almost everything Mark Rosewater said. I can't pinpoint anything in my head where I was like, I don't think that's true, Mark Rosewater. Like, it makes perfect sense. And
do you really ever say that to him, though?
I mean, you know, I wouldn't say that to him. I'd say, oh my God, it's so nice to meet you. And that would be kind of about it. Which is funny because...
Drool drips from your mouth.
Yeah, exactly. But regardless, you know, those are going to be fantastic. This set is looking great visually as well as, you know, mechanics-wise and the cards in it and whatever. As I mentioned, we're going to be covering the pre-release, you know, for this set. You guys should definitely give that a watch. Subscribe down below. You'll find out as soon as those videos get released.
When he mentioned mechanics, like, absolutely, the vehicles, that is the thing that is the coolest to
It looks awesome.
The vehicles.
It looks awesome.
The fact that they exist, the way they coincide with the other cards.
The crew
mechanics of it. Oh my God.
The crew mechanics brilliant.
So
the fact that pilots are a creature type that make the vehicles better when you crew vehicles with them. I mean, come on. Come on. It's brilliant. So, congratulations, Wizards of the Coast, for knocking it out of the park before we've even started.
Yeah.
Right? We haven't even gotten to play with these cards yet. I feel like it's going to be insane. You know, let us know what your feelings are in the comments down below. As I said, the set looks insane. We're going to be back, as always, next week with another review of the next story. It will be, if my calendar in my head is correct, it will be the last story that we review before the set comes out. And so that video will come out on Thursday. We will have pre-release stuff on Friday and Saturday and Sunday maybe. Keep your eyes out for that. And then release after that, we'll work on that following that because we'll have a story in between as well. So, guys, as I sigh at the end of all these because it's a lot. But thank you so much for watching. Yes. This has been a drastically shorter video than the last one, but a good one nonetheless, I think. You let us know what you think down below. If you liked it, there's a button that'll allow you to express that. If you disliked it, there's a button that allows you to express that. If you've gotten this far and you dislike it, props.
If you haven't checked out the story, please go do that. If you haven't checked out the spoilers, please go do that because they're fantastic.
Beautiful.
And if you haven't checked out the vehicles, then do that now.
She can't help you. You have to go do that now.
Like, don't wait. I don't care if you have to pee. Like, just go do it now.
Also, the Masterpiece cards look beautiful. Or the invention cards look beautiful. The swords especially. Oh my God.
Yeah, he's freaking out about that.
Oh my God. The swords are amazing. Come on.
No,
They're so good.
Everything about the vehicles is just
well, the vehicles aren't masterpieces. I'm just talking about the invention masterpiece thing.
They should be masterpieces.
Well, they are masterpieces in your mind.
Yes.
As we are here nerdgasming, or as we call it, showing off our hashtag Vorthos Pride, thank you guys so much, as we said, for watching from the Geek for All YouTube channel. I've been Joe.
And I'm Amy.
And as we always say, in whichever video of ours you watch next, we will see you all next time. Thanks, everybody.